Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Thailand!
Tom, where you go last night?
I love my Thai, I like at home.
Imperial Hotel Bangkok, the base for the 59 British journalists fresh in from Australia who are here to report the 3-day Charles and Di tour of Thailand. Having wandered around this part of the world for the last 3 years, covering the turmoil of Southeast Asia, border conflicts, mini-wars and the occasional execution, it's a chance to meet old friends and renew acquaintances. I was hoping watching the Royal Watchers would turn out to be fun. They are, after all, known as the Rat Pack. This is the journalist press pack. Welcome to the City of Angels. Some tourist tips. Oh, a guide to the nightlife. Potted history of the Thai royal family. More rubbish. Schedule of what's happening. Well, that's useful anyway. First stop is Don Muang Airport. The British Embassy have organised everything. The transport, the accommodation, phones and telexes. And for $5 each, we have an air-conditioned minibus and a police escort. As the royal couple step off the plane, 100 motor-driven cameras rattle into life. I was puzzled. What was there to write about? Where was the story? I should have known. She was wearing it. The Thai press has a different approach to royal reporting, one of total respect. After all, it was not so long ago that you could lose your head for just touching the king. Today, a law called lèse-majesté still keeps their press in order. Any transgression, and you end up behind bars. Who's going to risk 15 years in jail for insulting the king? While the Thais are gagged, the British are pushing back the frontiers of royal reportage. After 17 years, James Whittaker is at the top of his profession. I wondered how he found his stories.
I have described myself in the past, and I stick with it, as the master of trivia. For us, it's the end of a 2-week tour because there's been 12 days in Australia, and in all that time there really hasn't been a single story. Day after day, a lot of it's around pictures, pretty pictures, which is absolutely fine. It's what it should be. It's a contrast in the paper. There's a lot of heavy news of dreadful things, of people, young people being killed in tragic circumstances, other heavy stories. This is light relief.
It's not so easy for the Rat Pack photographers, as I soon discovered. The name of the game is to keep ahead of the opposition. After all, one picture, after syndication, can be worth over £10,000. Their antics in pursuit of pictures and stories and money have not made them many friends, least of all in Buckingham Palace.
We've always been the Rat Pack. We've been the creme de la scum, the hiders in bushes, the rats. The Duke of Edinburgh once called us the Rat Pack. We were standing on a lawn in Dhaka somewhere, Bangladesh, and we were standing waiting to line up when we used to meet them. It was probably still to meet the Queen, and he said, "Oh, here come the Rat Pack now."
I have to be pretty fit for this. All I missed in the stampede was the signing of the visitors' book in the Temple of the Emerald Buddha. But out of such innocent events, royal scoops are made. Dana, according to the next day's papers, had allegedly misspelled her name. It looked perfectly okay to me. So where do you dot the I's between fantasy and reality?
As I say, I can only speak for myself. I have never made up a story. I've never made up a quote in my life. That doesn't mean that I haven't got things wrong. But when I get it wrong, I may have taken 3 weeks to get it wrong. I have believed something to be right. Somebody's told me something which may subsequently prove inaccurate, but I can tell you that's a very black day when that happens.
It's pure entertainment. It's predictable. I think some of them don't exactly stand much factual scrutiny. I noticed the surf lifesavers at Bondi Beach were being quoted as describing Di as a Bonza Sheila. Well, I don't think any Australians used the word Bonza for 50 years, but 4 Fleet Street papers quoted them as saying that, so of course it must be right.
One of the problems of spotting our own Bonza Sheila is getting anywhere near her. James Whittaker had earlier in the day spotted 3 zits on the Sheila's shoulder. How did he do it? Binoculars, of course. I couldn't spot any mosquito bites through my own rose-coloured glasses, but the rat pack fever was catching up with me. With such important stories waiting to be filed to London, it's crucial to know exactly what time it is back home. I'm getting the hang of this now. I've got my binoculars and 2 watches, Bangkok time and London time. Typical Royal Watchers gear. Well, this is our 4th position around this area this afternoon, and we're all getting pretty tired and niggly. What's happened is that one person has gone inside this building here to represent all the British journalists, all the British writers. That man is James Whittaker of the Daily Mirror, and he's going to come out and tell us exactly what's going on.
There's basket making, people making dry flowers, soft animals, material roses, lace crocheting, 6 ladies knitting, little cockerels and hats and booties, paper hats, 6 flowers, 6 ladies making. Standing alongside them, it would become a farce. And so what happens is you have 2 or 3, and in fact in the case of Thailand, 1, going in representing everybody. And that is about it, chaps.
Well done, James. That was excellent. James, you can stand down for the rest of the tour.
He's asking through the interpreter. That night was the high point of the royal tour. Representing the entire British press contingent was Stuart Payne of the London Standard.
She had her hair swept back, and she had purple and white orchids. The dress was very good.
Like a Tom Airlines stewardess.
Yeah, they do. Well, the orchid is like almost the natural flower, isn't it?
Are you saying
orchids in her hair?
Yeah, the hair was swept back, tied in a little sort of bow in the back. The other important thing was that the Crown Prince was not there with either his wife or his mistress. He was there with his sister.
that could be worse?
With such news-gathering techniques, is it really all that surprising that the stories are all the same at the end of the day? The King and Crown Prince of Thailand never made the British papers the following day. It was all down to Di's hairdo and dress again, which was described as pink, strapless and backless, which made her blooming marvellous in spite of being tired and, of course, dyslexic. Despite all of this, she came up smelling of roses. All this information from journalists costing their newspapers at least £10,000 each for the round trip. Well, they say it sells newspapers.
Sauteed chicken with snow
It's a
beans.
very serious job. It's entertaining and informing millions of people. It's not a game. I mean, we enjoy what we do, but it's serious stuff. And unless you produce it, you get tipped out.
While the reporters were being debriefed, the real work was being done by Steve Wood, Daily Express photographer, behind his locked bedroom door. Of the 2 pool photographers, his were the only pictures that came out. For Steve, it was a scramble to send the pictures up the line to his London office before releasing his negatives to the rest of the pack. Can you talk us through what you're doing, Steve?
Just selecting an egg. Now, I'm putting it onto this carrier so that I can enlarge the picture and get it just in the right shape. Now putting it in the machine, into the transmitter. Now I can blow this picture up for and then I can just send it completely automatically. Hopefully it'll play.
If you were to have believed the papers the following day, each of these photographs was taken by a different photographer, each taking credit for himself. They were, of course, all taken by Steve Wood. Chiang Mai, 500 miles north of Bangkok. Sweltering in the heat, tired, dispirited with the lack of news, and jostled by Thai security, the pack's nerves are getting frayed. There are few opportunities left to get that last good picture, and it's no good complaining. As far as the Thais are concerned, the press belong in one place, and one place alone, in the pens. Visiting royalty is still royalty, and the press should show their respect. It hasn't always been like this. Didn't it used to be the crowds who were penned in? In a previous visit by the Queen and Prince Philip in 1972, the royal press were given preferential treatment. This cameraman was only a few feet away. Things have changed. I wonder why. What are the things that are most likely to get you down about these things?
Pens.
Pens.
Pens and the organisation. The lack of contact now with the royals. You get no media briefings. We used to be able to talk to them and with people, you know, just like this, and you can't talk to them anymore. There's a feeling of isolation between the press and the palace is growing more and more.
While the royals held centre stage for 3 days, I was beginning to feel sympathy for the Rat Pack, a sympathy born out of joint suffering. The whole mood had changed. What were we all doing there? Millions of pounds were being spent by newspapers and television companies. But why all this interest? They are, after all, mere mortals, aren't they?
Sadly, it's a death watch, if you like. You're waiting, because they are the future king and queen, you're waiting in case something happens to them. You're not expecting anything like here today, an umbrella factory. I mean, that's just a laugh. You know, my office said this morning, we'll contact you after you've been to the umbrella factory. It's sort of, so what? It's the tail end of a tour and you're watching. It's going to be announced in a few minutes that he's going to go off to Tanzania on a sort of safari thing. That makes our day. That'll be the major story. Yet another trip which will be construed in some circles as an odd adventure by a prince who is in need of, you know, whatever you want. Search of isolation, search of himself, or search for a new world. Well, who knows?
How are they all doing this year?
Hello, copy. Can you catch line it Royal? Yeah, can you byline it Stuart Payne in Chiang Mai? That's, I'll give you the spelling. C-H-I-A-N-G, new word, M-mother, A-I. Princess Diana is to fly home alone today at the end of the royal tour of Thailand.
At home you might not have known it, but there was a border war going on in Thailand at the same time. Tinged by guilt, I needed the reassurance of a colleague. What had these past 3 days been all about? So, Bill, the party's over. Can I really take it seriously?
Well, I think you've got to, Andrew. Yeah, we're in Southeast Asia, which is a world flashpoint. You know, 100 miles down the road, we've got the Thai Air Force, which is backed by America, bombing hell out of the Laotian army, which is backed by Russia. You know, World War III could be around the corner. Just down the road, we've got the Kampuchea crisis still unresolved after 8 years. And you know, but I mean, sometimes we take ourselves a bit seriously in this neck of the woods. Then you know, along comes a story like this, and we realise the rest all pales into insignificance. You know, I mean, this is the royal family. You know, and we followed them around for 3 days and around Thailand, and we've just realised the big story is that Prince Charles is going to Tanzania. He wasn't here at all.
What's your newspaper got out of it?
Well, not very much, Andrew, actually, because I've just heard we're on strike.